something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I'm coming up on 10 years
Mm.
of my ordination this year, in fact. And
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. I've survived so far. But like on one hand, finding a place in the Episcopal Church, I don't know that if I'd stayed in a Korean church, if I would have become an ordained pastor or not, or even in some of the other sort of like non-denominational circles that I've been in. On one hand, sort of have found a place of leadership and felt like the Episcopal Church at least had that space. At least they ordained women, which some of
Hmm.
the denominations I've been a part of have not. Um, but as someone who's was ordained like later in life, I have also felt this sense of, to your point about like, can you be Anglican without being Anglo? Not in an explicit way, but almost in like sort of like a implicit or kind of under the surface way. I feel like there is this questioning of like, like kind of like, are you Episcopalian enough? You're
Hmm.
not, because I know for me, like I do bring my Koreanness and the other traditions that I've been a part of, and that have shaped me and formed me and who I am.
Right.
And but then sometimes I feel like there's this, they wouldn't say like, oh, it's about being white and Anglo, but there's this like almost like this persona that I
Hmm.
feel like
Hmm.
that people don't call it white, but actually it is sort of like white Anglo, and that
Yeah.
you have to kind of be like this in order to be like, now you're really
Yes. Right.
Episcopalian.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just curious, like
I
what
th-
your experience has
I
been
think that
around
it's
that.
the ethos in which we operate,
Mm-hmm.
and it is embedded in our DNA to
Mm-hmm.
have that very hierarchical structure. Even in this age when there is so much attention on people sort of wanting to break out of the hierarchical mode and flatten the pyramid a little bit, this church is still
Mm-hmm.
straight up and down hierarchical.
In the structure that the Episcopal Church is, I'm curious, do you see like in these places, I see some things changing um, versus like when you were first ordained?
When I was first ordained, we were um, in the days of there will come a time when we might have to see bivocational priests.
Mm-hmm.
There may not be enough churches for all of the priests. That was shock.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Look where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
All there are people who are discerning bivocational ministry.
Yeah.
So I was in a white environment, white space, in three churches, um, white communities, a sea of blue hair that I preached to, um, very conservative, um, Illinois, places in Ohio. I thought for sure the church was dead. And now I'm talking about I'm in my uh, late 2009, 10, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, churches were declining and teeny and shrinking. I knew the church was dead. I went to General Convention. I think that was in Utah. And I saw a church there that I did not recognize.
Hmm.
It was young, vibrant, evangelical, social justice minded, active, spiritual, just happy to be doing ministry.
Hmm.
Looked nothing like the church at home.
Yeah.
I was so relieved. I started to cry, hearing all the different languages that had to be translated for all of the deputies to be able to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And my message coming home from General Convention that year was, we are not dead.
Mm-hmm.
We are frozen, but we
Mm-hmm.
are not dead. There's a whole different church out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I begin to see that whole different church out there beginning to come around into the places that I have been. Now, born and raised in Chicago, did my calls to parishes through the Midwest. Coming back to Chicago now, I can see that we are in a different space. We might be in a spiral, but the
Mm-hmm.
spiral, I think, is spiraling up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is really a vital need for the church to re-examine its systems.
Mm. Yes.
We've got antiquated systems that just are not working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah. 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 It there's a ministry, I think, that came out of England called Fresh Expressions.
Yes.
And I've not interacted with them much, but I've kind of followed them a bit online. And but just the name, I
Mm,
really like this idea of fresh expressions. And you would hope that, like, even if you're standing solidly within a particular worship tradition, hopefully one that you would be just open to the Spirit and how
mhm,
the Spirit's moving. And that there would always be that question of, like, what's the fresh expression of the Spirit in our community,
mhm.
and that can bless others. Like, I always love the way Bishop Curry talks about how we're the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement.
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is really beautiful. But it can be easy to miss the Spirit
Sure.
too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, the church model that we have inherited is the church of empire.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
And
Yes.
theologically, in my opinion, theologically, emotionally, mentally, and what we're seeing in praxis, I think, is an understanding of a widening
Hmm.
of that part, not just authority, but
Yeah.
participation.
Yes. That's right.
So the image I have is of a Hershey kiss that you
Hmm.
you put on the stove, and it
Yeah.
just kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller till
Uh-huh.
till it's a round puddle.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know, so that's kind of the image I'm
Yeah.
going for, is
Yeah.
to
I
make
love
it
that.
much more collaborative, and
Right. Yeah.
and maybe then we really will have four equal orders to the
Mm,
church.
yeah. There's a kind of a church, I think, to what you were saying, like, there's the church looks so different at that general convention than at home, but there's a church that's emerging that is something, it's a work of the Spirit.
Hmm.
It is one that I think is, like, more flat, as I think
Hmm.
as it should be, in the
Hmm.
church, that's more flat. And there are people, like, not being reached by the gospel because, like, the churches and the ministries that would reach them have not yet either been created or come into their fullness, because I think the leaders who would lead those churches have not yet been raised up. And
Hmm.
I think they haven't been raised up because we haven't seen them.
Yes, right, right.
Yeah, or we don't see them.
We
And
don't see them, I
and so
think.
what are we gonna do about that as a
Yeah,
church?
yeah.
Yeah.
And who is acceptable? I
Yes.
mean, the clergy, we are a church that believes in a learned clergy.
Hmm.
Our formal vestments for
Hmm.
formal occasions includes an academic hood.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we are so oriented to the
Yeah.
very elite,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I had the uh, privilege of preaching at commencement this year.
Mhm.
And the question that I asked was, congratulations. What are you going to do with your privilege?
Mm. Yeah.
And went from there.
Mm.
But that's, that's very much the heart of it. Yes, we are privileged. Yes, we've got all these very wealthy dead white men,
Mhm.
and we have their legacies and all their money. And what are we going to do with that?
Yeah.
We repent over how we acquired it.
Mhm.
So what are we going to do with it now?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are we going to do with our power and privilege now?
Yeah.
And that's what is beginning to emerge, I see, in the church. So my field basically is contextual theology,
Mhm.
and that really focuses on the theology that is in the ground, bubbling up within a particular context,
Mhm.
and that ministry to be real, authentic, incarnated, must incorporate that organic theology and be embodied so that
Mhm.
it's a mix of
Mhm.
things. I
Mhm.
don't know if you're familiar with Koyama's water buffalo theology,
No.
but
Mm-mm.
it is a fabulous read about a man who is Japanese. He taught in Thailand. He was in New York. And he, in his travels and teaching, he sees how you can't cook a Korean dish in Thailand without having some influence of the
Right.
Taiwanese in,
Yeah.
and so you may not understand what exactly went into the pot to cook it,
Mm.
but the smell is wonderful, and it's a mixture and it's a blend. And
Yeah.
that's what contextual theology it does. It
Mm.
blends in so that it's authentic and
Yeah.
understands how to introduce new concepts.
I love that.
So
Yeah.
that's what I see bubbling up. That's
Yeah.
my
I love
ultimate
that.
hope.
Yeah, I love that. And just as you're describing like that dish of
Hmm.
the mix of flavors, it makes you think about how like the wonderful things that can be created, when you
Yes.
have that. And there's got to be a sense of of not coming from a place of fear. Like
Hmm.
if we add this in, we're going to lose the purity of the
Hmm.
kimchi or something,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Right.
you know. But it's like being able to say like, no, well, like, I mean, kimchi on its own is delicious,
Yes.
and when you
Yeah.
add it with this, it's also delicious.
Yes. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in some ways, I mean, because Korean food is becoming more popular,
Very
just
popular. Yeah.
many Korean things becoming more popular. It's interesting because there are some, some friends, as sort of non-Korean friends that I've been introducing food to, and some of them they adore kimchi. But then others of them are like, I cannot eat the stuff. But then can eat something that's like where it's like where it is mixed with, actually, now I think about
Yeah.
it, mixed with
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
else. And you realize more people are able to enjoy the goodness that is Korean food
Yeah. Right. Right.
when you have that,
Yeah.
this like contextual theology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And mix it with something familiar.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so so that's what I'm waiting for the next generation of leaders to do,
Mm-hmm.
is to kind of till the soil and
Yeah.
allow all of this organic theology and spirituality to just bubble up
Yeah.
from within the context of the culture.
Yeah. I'm curious, like for you, like now at this point in your life, you're about to retire. You've had, these 20 years of ministry and ministry that wasn't necessarily in the Episcopal Church before that. Like how your own leadership, as so here's this Korean woman coming into this Anglo church, how you've experienced or observed like your own leadership, both like coming into the fullness of who you are and how you've been like kind of maybe impacted by the context, or I don't know, just curious like what leadership has been like being true to yourself while being in this sort of very foreign environment at the same time.
Mm, thank you. That's a good question. As I said, I started under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Alan made a comment that I was flying under the radar,
Yeah, yeah.
because it just was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my first experience that really impacted me was tokenism.
Mm-hmm.
So you enter a white space as a non-white, and everybody knows you.
Mm-hmm.
So you walk into a general convention or a diocesan meeting, everybody knows you the first time you're introduced. You don't know anybody, and everyone is calling you by name, and which is very nice, friendly. And you
Mm-hmm.
can't respond, "Oh, hi, Jack," because
Mm-hmm.
you have no idea who this person is because you've never met them before. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a, okay, take a deep breath. You're going to be all right through this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was really resentful at first when I sensed I was being tokenized
Mm-hmm.
on a church. And when I say church, I mean diocesan as well as parish. Um, and then it occurred to me one day that even as a token, it puts me at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And even as a token, when I speak, people hear it. They may disregard it, they may disagree with it, whatever, but they cannot avoid hearing what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
On top of having this sort of cultural overlay, I also happen to be an extraordinarily introverted person.
Mm-hmm.
And I process internally. And when I have finished processing, then I speak. I don't process out loud. So it comes across as KJ rarely says anything,
Mm-hmm.
but when she does, it is really significant.
Yeah.
So I was able to develop, by God's grace, a way of leading that allowed me to maintain sort of a quiet presence, but
Mm-hmm.
still have an element of authority and
Mm-hmm.
um, control over a situation.
Yeah.
It has taken me a long time to figure out that particular kind of leadership model.
Yeah.
It's not like a Heifetz and, what's his name? Going straight in for the adaptive change. You have to
Uh-huh,
kind of go around.
uh-huh. Right. Yeah. Right. 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 Like maybe a little more subtle.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
subtle. The things that one of the things that astounds me between the difference between the two cultures is how much nuance
Mm,
the Anglo culture misses.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Totally clueless. And
Mm-hmm.
all of the infinitesimal, minute things that Asians notice about everything. I think most importantly, understanding that ministry is a continual experiment.
Mhm.
It's not a try this and you did it right. And
Right.
we are really stuck in that mentality.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it is ministry is in the doing and the creating of, not
Hmm.
in the end result. And
Yeah.
we're so end result oriented.
Yeah. 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 That's so true. Yeah, and we're always kind of seeking the silver bullet that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna grow our church, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like trying to be like somebody else. And it's that whole like David and Goliath, like the armor thing, where like
Mm-hmm.
Saul,
Mm-hmm.
made
Yeah,
David wear his
right.
armor. He was just like, get this off of me. I just need my 5 stones and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
right,
fucked.
right.
Yeah, and it's like I think like discernment, then becoming like real discernment and listening to the spirit for like this community, and like what's God calling this community to be like, rather than I need to be like the church down the street.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes it different? I was serving an area in an area that had it's a rural urban area. Four very small Episcopal churches within 15-minute drive of each other.
Mhm.
So built in the early 1900s. So I had one of these little churches. They were all failing and competing. So
Mhm.
I made a folder and it said, you know, the Episcopal Church welcomes you. And it was just a blank folder. And inside I put the brochure of each of the Episcopal churches um, available in the driving area, and
Mhm.
and gave a recap. If you're looking for exceptional children's programs, go to Emmanuel. If you're interested
Mhm.
in book studies, and then go to blah blah blah. If you want a contemplative service, you'd be happy at check out, you know,
Yeah.
and the whole purpose was one church, four convenient locations, you know.
Right.
And that's what I passed
Yeah.
out as the
Yeah.
welcome brochure
uh,
to the
that's
church.
that's
So
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I would like much more of that
Yeah. Right.
than I am a rock, I am an island.
Yeah. Right. Right. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for, for much longer. I want to be respectful of your time.
Well, we can
Um,
talk again.
yeah, this will not be the last time we'll talk for sure.
It's because
But
at the isolation that you may feel is the isolation that I still feel.
yeah,
And it is good for my soul to connect with somebody who I can assume gets a good part of me.
yeah, yeah. No, I feel the same exact way. And I feel really grateful for like the strange circumstances that
Yeah,
brought us
right.
together
Yeah, right.
to connect us,
Yeah.
and really just grateful for you, and grateful for your story, and your willingness to share it with me and with others too.
Well, my pleasure. My
Yeah,
pleasure. So,
yeah.
all right. So God bless, and I
Yeah.
will get connected again soon
Yes,
and
yes, for
continue
sure.
our conversation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. In the
Thank you,
meantime,
KJ.
grace and peace.
Yes, to you as well. To you as
Okay.
well.
All right.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.